Alrighty, feel free to start dropping some input into the Mentee. We can read it together, have some fun. Literally anything does, just 1 or 2 words, for example, would be great. Voting, that's a good one. Yep, being able to give your opinion on certain topics is also a very close one to our hearts as citizens in a democracy. Signing petitions. Yeah, I already like that this is very much going in like 3 different directions. So voting really would be sort of the more formal way of active citizenship, really saying, I go to the polls and I sort of put the cross in and I participate in the way that even the constitution of my country or the laws and the customs of my country allow me to do, and I select the government, meaning that, you really make it sort of a representative government in that sense. You make it so that whomever decides how much money your town gets, whomever decides when you can drink, when you can vote, what sort of schools you can go to, for example, those people are decided on by you and everyone else in your country. And that's obviously the most formalized one. Being able to give opinions on certain topics and signing petitions are definitely sort of the more active in the less formalized sense, where you're actually engaging in political processes in the way that's not just procedural. You're really sort of trying to shape opinion yourself. You're influencing others, and that's really, part of what EYP does or intends to do. And thank you for already touching upon it, because it's very important in that sense to what we'll be discussing. Organizing existing efforts for change is great because it really also touches on the topic of, we probably are not just politically engaging because it's fun, although it can be a lot of fun. But normally we want to bring about some sort of change, and we want to bring about some reform or improvements to current situations. You might want to protest a law. You might want to support a political party. You might want to support democratic efforts or electoral reform efforts, that sort of thing. Those are all active citizenship initiatives and efforts. And of course, taking part in the activities of a local NGO, donating products and clothes can also be very political efforts. So engagement with EYP is obviously in itself an active citizenship role. And I think Chris can tell you a little bit about it with her activities with the BASIS program, where it really is the focus to really make sure that the countries where civil societies are in many cases being targeted by governments or by authoritarian regimes, then there's a very political nature to the act of even engaging in EYP, where you're actually saying, but engaging in politics isn't wrong per se, regardless of what the government says. And donating products and clothes, especially we now see with, like, for example, the invasion in Ukraine, the donation of products and clothes is in itself, of course, also supporting, that being in solidarity with the victims of a political act, which is war in itself. Thank you for that. I think we're already touching into some very varied points, and also into some of what EYP can and can't do. We can educate people towards voting. We can educate people towards the topics that they discuss, but it's a bit harder to, really get them to necessarily, for example, go to a protest. We don't have that sort of pull with people, and that's perfectly fine. People do whatever they like in their own lives, but with our objectives in EYP being to really getting people to engage with their communities, engage with their political processes, the concept of active citizenship as we work on it at the office is really about breaking out of this EYP bubble and making sure that we can get activities going besides just yeah, engaging in political simulations like we do at EYP, or yeah, maybe going to 1 or 2 talks. So I think I'd hand over to Chris now for a little bit on the nature of EYP and when it comes to active citizenship and so forth. So thank you for bearing with me in this short check-in activity. And Chris, I'd hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you, João. And thank you all for participating in our check-in activity and already thinking about active citizenship. And so what we would like to talk about today is, of course, active citizenship in EYP, and I will shorten it to AC. Otherwise, you will hear active citizenship a lot during this talk. And then we will go into Alumni Network, because it was also our aim to explain and go deeper into how alumni is connected to it and how they contribute to AC in EYP. And also we would have some time for a discussion and of course your questions. And then if you have any understanding questions in the meanwhile, please feel free to ask them straight away, either by writing in the chat or raising your hand if it's not possible for you to write or it would be more comfortable. And then we can go to the next slide. So I would start with AC in EYP and touch upon our theory of change, impact, and strategy. And so as you know, EYP exists since 1987, and we have empowered and inspired more than 200,000 of young people. Can you imagine this number? It's really hard to imagine 200,000 thousands of young people, who are also many of whom are not young anymore. Depends how you define it. And so, and our mission, as we see it, is to inspire and empower young people to become open-minded, tolerant, and active citizens. And our vision is a democratic, peaceful, sustainable, and open society where every young person is informed and empowered to play an active role in the shaping of their own lives and society at large, also known as active citizenship or becoming an active citizen. So basically, we see ourselves as an NGO for civic education of young people in Europe, and we acknowledge our responsibility or our societal role as an organization which aims at equipping young people in a way that they are capable of further exploring and defining their own role as active citizens in society, and thereby create impact on their communities and beyond. We can go next. Thank you. Last year, we had a very exciting process together with the members of the network. So there were many VGB members involved, but also very many active volunteers, also some alumni, and with the help of 2 external consultants, one EYPer, you'll hear his name in the end, and one external person, we dived into the EYP's Impact Framework. So what is it, how it could be developed, how can we measure our impact? And we built it on the 3 impact areas, which are the main ones that we see. So with this, I would like to just share with you, the reasoning behind why we see that active citizenship is connected to EYP, and also how it manifests. So first area is, of course, being a strong and inclusive youth-led organization. The second is providing a life-changing experience. So these are knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values. And we explicitly mention and also measure in our evaluation forms essential professional and active citizenship skills, which we define as communication, leadership, critical thinking, taking initiative, or creativity. And basically, this empowerment process is the educational backbone of EYP's impact. And the third area, which is much larger than the organization and individuals we have impact in, is a more tolerant, open-minded, and peaceful European society. So it's basically how we are trying to measure how EYP has an impact in the broader society. So interaction with the outside world and its actors, key stakeholders, and local communities. Okay. Then let's continue. And basically in this process, we defined what is actually, the process, because of course there could be different impacts or different levels of societal engagement. And this big and complicated graph, I don't know even if you can see it well, but I will guide you through it. So basically here together with the consultants, we try to see what are the different levels of engagement. And I would just go from the low level of impact. So a disclaimer, of course, there could be also other cases and other instances, and maybe it also, varies on the situation, but how we define them in the theory of change is for the low impact is, getting awareness for young people, voting, promoting EYP values in their immediate environment. So this could happen, usually after they visit some kind of EYP event. Then there's the middle impact, which is joining protests, movements, different initiatives. Then it could be volunteering in a different civil society organization. It could also be speaking out for democracy and peace, engaging in government initiatives, and contributing to corporate social responsibility policies, initiatives. And then the highest level of impact, as was defined, was assuming more leadership positions, setting up an own organization that is promoting civil society, promoting active citizenship education, especially while being in the public office, if there's such an opportunity, creating an own AC initiative, or assuming a leadership position or setting up a business with strong corporate social responsibility. And then, of course, this is like an engagement ladder for an individual. And then from this, we also defined an engagement ladder for us as an organization. This would serve for us as a guidance what we can also do as an international office, also under the guidance of a governing body. And there are also different levels. The lowest one being sharing information with the network on opportunities connected to AC. The middle one being participating ourselves in events to promote and discuss EYP values and engage with such partners who are also interested in this. And the highest one is creation of opportunities to strengthen youth civic engagement and active citizenship. So including bringing people from different backgrounds, value sets together in a non-confrontational environment, as it was defined, so there could be some kind of dialogue taking place and exchange and participation process to influence policy development and discussing EYP values, and increasing, of course, youth engagement. So with all this in mind, I would like to go to a strategy that has been developed. I'm sure that some of you heard about it and maybe even had a closer look, that we, the governing body, created a strategy for 5 years, so it's until 2025. And one of the pillars is actually called a network that works as a catalyst for AC. And how? We see that the EYP should provide volunteers, members, and participants with tangible tools to engage in society, societal structures and processes, and use our vast network of people to facilitate projects and connect young people to act in their local communities. And as a result, we have developed active citizenship labs, and the first one took place last year, and there's one taking place right now. And I would like to give over to João to tell more about it, as he was one of the organizers of the first active citizenship lab for our network.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, it's very nice to be able to talk about it. And also, if you have any questions or if at any point you want to just interject and quickly add anything, any suggestions as well, feel free to do so. But yeah, I mean, the Active Citizenship Lab was a very sort of new idea at the office. It was, as I mentioned initially, also the idea was for us to really try to have a bunch of EYPers come together and discuss how can we use EYP to be less inside EYP? How can we make sure that our activities are as socially connected, as socially impactful as we can without losing sort of the core of what makes EYP so great, and also what makes EYP EYP. So the event consisted of, also there's a small mistake there, it says late June 2022, it was late June 2021. But yeah, the idea was that we had 17 active citizenship shapers, that was the title that we gave to the participants, who gathered in Berlin or digitally. It was also still quite heavily COVID impacted. You can see one of the participants is wearing a mask. And yeah, it was in June 2021. And our head facilitator, Tarek, who's an EYPer from Switzerland, plus Helena Nepp, who used to be a project manager here at the international office, gathered to sort of try to get together a program that would help people and our participants talk about EYP as a socially active organization. And we connected the participants with these social partners. We got a bunch of organizations together, some folks from the US, there were people from Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken, Romania, of course from Germany, where it's rather easy for us to access some NGOs, and also Belgium, and just across Europe, basically, to really try to get as much of a sort of interchange, and really for our participants and EYPers to get an understanding that this sort of communication, this sort of connection can really occur, and we can be detached from society when we are doing EYP, but that doesn't have to be the case. So yeah, we discussed, of course, that integration, but also the support that NCs need for that integration to occur. And there was also a lobby advocacy training provided by Alberto Alemano, who's a rather famous academic and social advocate, who also is very commonly very commonly discussed when it comes to citizen participation in EU affairs. If you Google him, you'll probably see a couple of articles about him. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty big success from the content side. We were very happy with it. The feedback from the active citizenship shapers was also quite positive, and the good practices were generally were agreed on, and there was a toolkit that was created by the group that is available on the members platform. There's a link there that you can't click right now, but we'll probably share the presentation afterwards, and you can definitely just access it via the members platform at any point, where you can definitely just see all of the good practices, the ideas, the suggestions, etc., that the active citizenship shapers came up with. And they're very useful, they're very detailed, there's a lot of interesting contacts, interesting ideas that you can use in your own NCs, in your own EYP events, in your lives outside of EYP, and I would really recommend this document. I think it's a great summary of everything. And as Kristine also mentioned, there has been a follow-up to this, or there is a follow-up to this currently happening, which is called the Active Citizenship Lab 2022, which is happening right now in Budapest in conjunction with the Council of Europe. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely still ongoing. It's day 3 right now, if I'm not mistaken, or day 4 even. But yeah, there's some early takeaways. The first one is that young people really want to engage in social activities and socially interesting, socially responsible activities, but they don't necessarily know how to do so. They don't necessarily have the tools to go out and look for these activities. They don't necessarily know which ones they should invest their time on. And this is also sort of compounded the issue by the interest from some actors in our societies to promote irrelevant or inauthentic causes, so that young people can be tokens or manipulated into participating in something that will look very good on a press release, but that has very little interest in real real terms, for example, corporate social responsibility events can really go into this, where maybe an oil company, for example, funds a very small event for young people to give sort of opinions on the environment, and then they put it on a drawer somewhere. And for example, yeah, this oil company gets to say that, yes, we did a very nice thing with young people, but in the end, there's nothing that comes of this, and they just look good because they can say that they did something. And young people feel manipulated and sort of tokenized into participating. Another takeaway tends to be that it's not just organizations like EYP, it's about the development of a sort of holistic mindset and attitude of community and societal support, meaning it's about getting out there besides just doing these political simulations, besides going to sessions. It's about engaging in your local community, going to local NGOs, helping the people that are also your neighbors, not just traveling to a country that's very far away from yours and meeting people who are your age and sharing opinions. That's also part of it, but we can definitely do a lot also in our own backyard. Providing tools and knowledge is a very good way to start thinking about active citizenship, but it's definitely not the whole thing. We also need, opportunities for access. We need people to be able to engage in active citizenship. This comes into focus in terms of money. So some people don't have the money to participate in socially active things because they often cost money in terms of transport, in terms of food, in terms of accommodation. This happens a lot in EYP, but it happens also with other NGOs. So these tools and this knowledge are great starting points, but they're not the end goal. We really want to fundamentally reshape the conditions that also prevent a lot of people from engaging. And finally, one of our big objectives should be to create long-term active citizenships and make sure that it's not just young people that get these programs. It's also, it's different generations of people in societies, and also social classes, because it's very clear that this sort of program, the ones that exist the way EYP does, exist mostly for upper class or middle class individuals and students and children, not necessarily for working class or people from economically disfavored backgrounds or socially disfavored backgrounds generally. This is very much not just an EYP problem, but it is an EYP problem as well. So it also has to do with active citizenship. It has to do with being critical of our own activities and our own biases, and making sure that we do more to address those in terms of improving our equity, improving our inclusion, and making our participants more representative of the network that we claim to serve. So with all of that in mind, and I would just ask if there are any questions so far. You can also drop them in the chat. Going once, going twice. Cool. In that case, I would swiftly move on to the Alumni Network. As I mentioned, maybe very briefly at the start of the presentation, I am the alumni officer here at the office. What that means is that I am someone who deals with the people that don't really do EYP actively anymore, but that were EYPers or that are EYPers, but who have done a lot of sessions in the past, who were officials and delegates and so forth, but now don't work in EYP. They have families and they have jobs and they sort of aged out, but they're still interested in these issues. They're still interested in being involved, and that's where my job comes in. I basically want to provide them with opportunities, and it's also my job to make sure that they can be engaged with EYP and with active citizenship opportunities, despite them not being still actively involved. So why is it that we engage with alumni, and how did it start? It actually started in 2017 at the international session in Brno, which was a session where I was actually a delegate. And yeah, it was the 30th anniversary of the EYP network. And the alumni portfolio was born after the Brexit referendum in the UK. Really, yeah, obviously, I think we all know how that turned out. The UK voted to leave the European Union, and this was sort of a sad shock for Sol Patel, who was an alumnus in the 2000s, who was still very much a believer in the idea of European solidarity and European unity. And with the Brexit referendum, he really wanted to do something to combat this perception that we're all just becoming more and more isolated from each other, less and less European and less integrated into this common idea of the sort of shared future of this continent. And so he reached out to the office, and at the time to Ania Supernenko, who later became the executive director of the office, but who was at the time project manager for international sessions. And he asked, can we set up an alumni initiative? Can we do an event? Can we get a lot of alumni together and see how it goes, and then maybe carry on for the future? And turns out we could. For the farewell party of IS, for the farewell party of Brno in 2017, they got around 200 alumni together, plus the 150 participants of the session. And yeah, it was just a very big celebration, a very big party, where it was very clear that people in the alumni network were still happy to be European, and they were still happy to be engaged with EYP. And that was really the starting gun for the whole alumni project, the whole alumni initiative, leading us to eventually create the Alumni Coordination Group, which is this group of active alumni who are more engaged and sort of define the strategic priorities of the alumni network and help me, in this case, as the alumni officer, because I'm the person that organizes events like this for from the logistical side, from the slightly more day-to-day side. And they help me put those together, and they sort of also give me some directions on what they think would be more insightful, what would be more, just nice for alumni generally. And the purpose of the Alumni Network is defined in its mission statement, which was called a massive transformative purpose, which is connecting global citizens to enable and empower more democratic, inclusive, and engaged societies, which, it really goes well with the EYP mission statement and values. And it's really just kind of like for like also rewording of our concept of active citizenship. We want to make sure that people continue to be active citizens with the Alumni Network. So it makes perfect sense, of course, to connect these two topics, active citizenship in our daily work, in our sort of active members, and in our alumni as well. We have a few recurring projects in the Alumni Network. We have the alumni talks, which I'll get into in just a minute, but skipping over it for a second. We also have the mentorship program, which is how our alumni become sort of mentors to current active members or to younger alumni in a professional sense. So you're looking towards maybe finding your first job, or you're trying to decide whether to go for a PhD, you're trying to decide whether to specialize in a different area. The mentorship program is great for you because there's a lot of very, very, very experienced people in the EYP network who can help and who can provide you with the sort of guidance that you'll find really nice. And it's a very popular program. We've just had our call open and we had more than 100 applications. So yeah, we're very happy with it all over Europe, of course. The Circle of Friends is a regular donation program. It's also important for the sort of functioning of the office, and it's very good to see that our alumni are also able to financially contribute to the sustainability of the long-term, of the sustainability of the activities of the network. And we also have the happy hours, which are sort of decentralized celebrations and get-togethers for alumni in different parts of Europe. So we've had some in, actually not even in Europe only, we've had them really all over the world. Some in Brussels, some in Berlin, of course, London. There have been some in Paris, Kazan, Kiev, New York, Shanghai, Hong Kong. It's really, it's been a motley of cities that we've had the happy hours, and it's really nice to see how far also EYP alumni went. And it was interesting, actually. We had a meeting with the ACG the other day, the Alumni Coordination Group, and Sol was just talking about how he was working with someone from his job, and she just randomly mentioned that she used to do this youth thing. And Sol, of course, with always like a sort of active ear, just asked, what was it? Could it have been EYP? And she was like, yes, it was. And then he literally realized just from that conversation that EYP, that they were both EYP alumni. And he literally had no idea. He was just working with her, and then suddenly, boom. And that's what's nice about EYP alumni. It's that you can really get this sense of community and this sense of a continued network over the years, just because you never know exactly who might be one of those 200,000 alumni going out there. You're one of them if you're joining this. So congrats, you're part of this. For EYP 35 specifically, since we're at the 35th anniversary of our network, there's also a bunch of different initiatives. We've just launched the EYP history book. If you want to buy yours, fill in the pre-order form. You've probably received an email about it, but let me know in the chat if you also need it here. Basically, you can pre-order it now. It's very nice. It's been put together by a group of volunteers for the last 2 years. And we also had a Berlin anniversary event in late June 2022. There's also a bunch of other initiatives, but I'd really get back to active citizenship now. Let me know if you want to hear a bit more about the Alumni Network. It's a very cool portfolio. Yes, I am a bit biased, but yeah. Yeah, going into alumni talks. What are alumni talks? We've actually folded them together with the peaceful talks this year. But yeah, they are generally just a concept framed with, getting alumni who tend to be pretty knowledgeable people, tend to be pretty opinionated people as well, partly because of EYP, and they talk and they exchange opinions regarding important topics in society. Obviously, it's also open for active members. It's really not a closed concept, but the idea is that our alumni share their thoughts on important subjects that they probably have a specific insight upon. We've had 21 alumni talks since they began in 2020. That's over 600 participants for all of them, which is an insane number if you think about it. These have all been held, not all actually, but the vast majority of them have been held online. So especially considering digital fatigue, we're very happy with how popular they've become over the years. This year in 2022, we held one in the aftermath of the start of the invasion of Ukraine. And it was, very well attended in the sense that people really wanted to have some guidance and some, knowledge on who should I be contributing to, how can I be of help, how can I support to ameliorate the situation. And we had a lot of Ukrainian EYPers, a lot of Ukrainian alumni joined to share their stories, to share their advice and suggestions. And it's this sort of powerful exchange that we often see in alumni talks and that we want to foster with them, because it is about keeping connected to the issues, remaining connected to the sort of important discussions that we need to have. And this is how the alumni talks provide this platform for people to continue in their daily lives to maybe transpose the communication that they had in the alumni talks, maybe to their workplace. Maybe they'll also start donating to a charity. Maybe they'll start volunteering somewhere. And through the alumni community, it is possible for people to remain committed, to remain interested in the idea of volunteering. And that's very cool. It's to sort of maintain this youthful idealism that we always have in EYP, but yeah, carry it forward into our professional lives and into our adulthood. And yeah, you can see some of the topics that we discussed over the 21 alumni talks in the past. Youth as an actor for civil society development, LGBTQ rights, anti-racism, women in politics, mental health. We've had some about working at the UN, some more career focused. It's really a very interesting concept as well. And if you ever hear about it, which you will, we have some more planned for 2022. I would really encourage you to attend. For my last couple of slides, I would just say it's been 35 years of EYP, more than 60 countries of residence for all of these alumni. There's 200,000 of them. And yeah, their support and expertise to EYP itself are completely immeasurable. Just for us, it's ridiculous the amount of work that we avoid or the insights that we receive from just having a voice of someone who has been doing this for as long or even longer than we have, to provide that insight and to remind us this is what it's about. We want to make sure that when people participate in EYP, they remain committed for life. And it's, I think for me personally, the greater advantage is even in the fact that it's just an inspiration to see people like this continue forward into their lives with still that idealism, with still that, yes, I can make the world a better place, not necessarily by myself, but by connecting with other people and by being solid, by showing solidarity and by showing an interest in my community and in my society, really, my neighborhood, in my backyard, and in everywhere else. So yes, if you have any questions again, I will do a 2-second wait, or hell, 5-second.
We'll also have some time in the end in case you need a bit more time to think about the questions.
Mm-hmm. And of course, feel always free to use the chat, of course. And I would just take now for my very last slide, talk about some of the more impressive alumni that we have in EYP in very, very different fields. And I mean, I have had to shorten this list a lot. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but it is an extensive one. There's a lot more extremely impressive EYPers. I think my saddest exclusion from this list is comedian David Mitchell. If you've heard about the Peep Show or anything, he's also a EYP alumnus, and he actually talked about it in an interview once, shockingly enough. But yeah, our current alumni are extremely valuable assets to support our active citizenship initiatives. They have knowledge, they have expertise, they are geniuses in their own fields. And I would just, the person you see in that photo is Dubravka Čuica. She's the Vice President of the European Commission, a former teacher, chaperone of EYP delegations in Dubrovnik and Dubrovnik International Session. And yeah, she's Vice President for Demography in the European Commission, the current one. This is actually a photo of her at a Brussels event with the Future of Europe ambassadors, the EYPers. And yeah, this is just one of many, many people that have been elected as part of their post-EYP career, if we want to euphemize it like that. But there's also people like Vasil Miroshnichenko, who was a very active civil society actor in Ukraine, and at the start of 2020 became the Ukrainian ambassador to Australia and New Zealand. Bjorn Lampe, who is a board member at a nonprofit financing organization, betterplace.org, who was someone who actually helped us set up a lot of our crowdfunding efforts. Jan Krčmar, the director of the Czech Solar Power Association, who advocates for green energy and sustainable energy. Danny Vanucki, who, as Chris mentioned, is the person who helped us organize the impact assessment framework and who does so professionally for other NGOs, namely and especially for human rights focused NGOs. Cecilia Pelosniemi, sorry, Finnish has never been my language. She's a UN project manager, I believe, right now in Syria, focusing on work with women and food security in Syria. She's, of course, generally had a career focusing on international development and peace building. She's also very helpful in terms of hosting these alumni talks that mostly focus on very, very sensitive and emotional, for good reason, subjects, because she has that background and she sort of knows how to do it. And that's where I'm mentioning that the expertise comes in. Besides that, we also have one of the other people who are in the alumni coordination group, Maria Manulescu, who currently works in The Hague as an international criminal lawyer. Mental health advocacy, Janis Kulenkod, I'm pretty sure I also mispronounced that. He's the founder of Togetherness Hub, which is sort of this organization to fight loneliness. It's a very cool organization. As someone who studied psychology, very light flex there. I can really recommend checking out the organization. It's really very cool. And finally, Lilian Liu, who is a sustainability leader at Braze, which is a large people development company. And yeah, her job is to sort of consult within the company for their sustainability initiatives, how to make sure that their initiatives are, their operations and their activities are generally as eco-friendly as possible, as sustainable as possible. Yeah, that is a very, very, very small sample of some of the most impressive alumni that we have, not forgetting David Mitchell. And with that in mind, I would just very quickly take a moment to mention that this talk has also been organized in the frame of the Youth Dialogue for Strong Civic Spaces project, which is a project that we have in cooperation with the German Federal Foreign Office. It's the project that Chris is a manager for. I'm not sure if you want to add anything on that, Chris.
No, it's pretty simple. It's a project that supports especially our participants and young people in the Eastern Partnership countries. And as you know, we have NCs in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, but also Ukraine, Belarus, and now also Moldova is a country we are focusing on. So this activities that we do with them, and also the capacity building activities in the network, we can support them and also their travels to those events. So it's a nice project that we have in the frame of a civil society cooperation with them.
And yeah, it's it's a pretty big honor for us to be able to work with such a big partner, and they're very supportive of our efforts. But that in mind, we would like to now open a short space for questions and discussion, and just to hear from you on whether you have any thoughts on how the network has developed in terms of active citizenship efforts, what your thoughts are on active citizenship within EYP itself. We actually have 2 questions, and I'd go back to Mentee, if I can, again, give me just 1 second. The questions are quite simple, but I do need to get to them.
I think it's the same link, right? That we
Yes,
shared
it is
in
the
beginning.
same link. Yes, if
You can find it in the chat.
Please.
I can also resend it.
Yes, okay, I finally managed. Thank you for bearing with me. Or no, I didn't. Give me 2 more seconds.
I can see it.
Oh, nice. I'm trying to also share the screen, but it's a bit harder than I found it to be in the past. I used to be the person that didn't understand how other people had trouble with this, but hubris. Yes, I finally managed. Do you believe EYP exists in a bubble? And do you have an impact in society beyond EYP? This is a question I think I asked myself a lot when I was doing a lot of sessions. And yeah, it's just, do we have an impact besides going to sessions, besides doing things that, like going to committee work, debating topics, and does it just stay there, or do you think EYP really sort of impact society around it? I understand this might be a big question, so I think I'll just leave you to slowly take it in, and we can get back to it in about 30 seconds. Let me know if you need a bit more time, of course, and feel free to run. Yep.
And I would add, if you feel like, your answer is too long, you can also just speak up. And actually a thought I had, and also, this question shows it by asking if we have an impact in society beyond EYP. And I think, João, you showed some very impressive alumnus. And I honestly believe that there are also some things that we can do that no one will even know about, that are also very much active citizenship behaviors in our environment. As we saw, there could be like different impact, but I think sometimes even the lowest impact can be multiplied, or could be, just a starting point. So I think it all really very much depends, honestly.
Oh yeah, you can talk for sure. Yeah, big time. Feel free to. That's totally fine, and we if it's a long answer, then please do that.
Yes, please, because I think it's gonna be so much longer. That maybe EYP may seem to some people to be just like people hanging around in like sessions, but after all, maybe some people attend those sessions without knowing anything about Europe or like the problems concerning us as young people and as citizens. So maybe EYP in the beginning may seem like a more entertainment thing, but after all, you just like learn about so many different topics that it's not just attending a session, it's like getting to know more things and then getting the chance to like discuss all of them with more people all around Europe. And in the end, that just enriches us, or at least it enriches me a lot.
That is very nice to hear, Anja. Thank you for sharing that it enriches you. I think it's definitely enriched me as well. And it's very nice to hear as well that the impact, that you believe that the impact exists on the level that we know about these topics, and that we are, just become more knowledgeable about certain tools and certain sort of mechanisms that exist in society for us to change it, as well as the actual issues that affected us. I also see that some people do believe that it exists in a bubble, especially for officials. However, it's very impactful on the delegate side. I will just take a quick break to give the word to Jelena.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, I know that João can hear me because we're in the same room, so I was waiting for positive response from someone else. I think while we're very, very active in EYP, it can be sort of in a bubble. But then when we leave the EYP, the knowledge that we gain through EYP and skills that we developed definitely helps us to be more active in our society as well.
Thank you, Yelena. I think, yeah, it definitely goes in the direction of what some of these other points make. As in, we saw with all of the alumni and the small actions we take in our daily lives, but also the skills and the knowledge we get from EYP. I think I'd really separate it in that way. So sort of the skills and the knowledge that we get and the values that we sort of take from it. One is sort of the hard things that we can say, yeah, I can speak in public now, or I can know how to moderate conflicts now, but I also know about Nord Stream and European financial market volatility, that sort of thing. It's always a big, lot of very specific knowledge that we get in EYP, and we also learn about things like solidarity, things like a European identity or a supranational identity, things that go beyond what we would normally maybe see on the news or hear from newspapers or our parents or so forth. I also see that someone mentioned the resolutions that we share with decision makers, which goes really to the point of the meeting with Dubravka Čuica, because that was specifically meant to meet with decision makers, can also have an effect on them because they can meet youth and talk to young people in a way that maybe isn't easy for them otherwise, or not necessarily easy, but they maybe don't want to listen to it as much if we don't make an effort to reach out to them, if we don't make an effort to make sure that they are listening to us. And yeah, I mean, from the other side, you also, I see here sustainability initiatives make people think more about climate change, use of resources, and adjust their behaviors. Again, I think it's really nice in the sense of we really make people think more about their actions, make people think more about the things they do, and be more critical of themselves because they are maybe exposed to an environment where we can definitely put up different standards, or we can put up challenging questions. I remember that the first really area, the first event where I even had vegan or vegetarian food was in an EYP session that lasted about a week, and it was challenging, especially at that time where I come from Portugal, where it's a country where we eat a lot of meat and a lot of fish, and every day I was very used to having 2 meals a day with meat and fish, and then suddenly I was eating just vegetables or seitan or soy basically every day, and it was a huge impact for me at the time. But now looking at my life, I maybe eat meat once or twice a week, or maybe a bit more in a less good week for me, but it has helped me to take that into consideration and to now think, okay, yeah, in sustainability terms, this is a good thing. I also see that we have a person maybe to join the meeting. And yeah, okay, outreach events in rural areas and regions with sort of that are very remote. Yeah, particularly so EYP is filling a gap there, because in urban areas and in areas with very sort of middle class populations or upper class populations, they probably have a lot of these events. But if EYP is catered to these, to these areas, then we can definitely have a bigger impact, because there's just not a lot of events done by often underfunded, for example, school systems, public school systems in those areas, due to structural reasons that we probably can't get into. But yeah, very good point as well. I really appreciate that point. I think it's very important from an equity and inclusion sort of standpoint. And it starts broadening our horizons. And I think that would be the last point that I would take before moving on to the next question. Because I think I'm also a little bit over time. Sorry about that, Chris. And I would maybe just let Chris also take the next question. If I can change it also. Give me 1 second. I'll stop sharing for a second. Aha, I have figured out how to do it. Next slide. So yeah, Chris, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, João. I think we don't see it.
There
yet.
we go. You should see it now.
Now it works. Ah, interesting. That's an interesting question. And I would like to say hello to Sophie who joined us. If you, yeah, I posted the link and now we're already in the discussion phase where anyone can add their thoughts or speak up about the questions that we have here. And I think this is the last question. So as soon as we finish discussion, yeah, we would finish the talk. So question is, I would repeat again, what would you, your NC or the network need to engage in active citizenship? So we already discussed many things that we do and how we see it in EYP network and what role alumni play and how we see it there as well. And also now from the answers to the last questions, we saw that, yeah, our events and maybe small things that we do during our events also contribute very much to AC. But maybe there's something that you still feel like is missing, or maybe we don't put enough focus. We would love to hear about it more. So we have an answer, one of the first answers. So it's this tools to engage in active citizenship, like a guide. I think tools, of course, there are skills that participants get from participating in our events and also, you know, all the skills they develop. And sometimes it's maybe not very clear how exactly it would contribute, but I guess it really becomes clear over time. And also, I think that AC is always very much connected to your own passions or to what you see is important now in your local community and your surroundings, or what is maybe happening also in the region you are on more international level, where you feel like you would like to act. And like a guide, we also talked about the first active citizenship lab, so you can find on the members platform some key takeaways, because already a group of volunteers discussed this and yeah, basically made their thoughts about what would be needed more there and how they reflected on it. So it's a very interesting read. Then there's one more question: put a more heavy focus on outreach events instead of selection procedure for NIS. For example, make it possible for officials disregarding leadership to get evaluations at small scale events. Okay, that's an interesting point. I'm wondering about the evaluations, meaning from the persons who are at the events. João, did you understand it also the same way?
Yeah, I think I see it a little bit as if we also sort of give people an incentive to be at these outreach and small scale events by also allowing them to get evaluations from them, meaning, you know, if you do a good job at a small scale outreach event, then it's not just going to be forgotten. And do let me know if I'm interpreting it the wrong way for the person who shared this point. But I think it's supposed to function as this sort of incentive for you to actually go to an outreach event and be recognized for it. And I think that's a very good point in that sense, because if you're an EYPer, then you definitely also want your work to be recognized within the network as, you know, you went out, you got to an event that's not quite as traditional as the others, that has a different audience, and you really put some effort into it. But again, do let me know if I interpret this wrong, or if you'd like to add anything for whomever wrote this, but I think it's a very good point in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think receiving an evaluation is definitely also useful to personal development when you can actually have like a good feedback from someone. And with outreach events, I think we really should do more of them, or organize more events in smaller cities. I think this is already happening, and we understand the temptation to organize it in a big city. Of course, when you have international participants, it makes it easier with the logistics and sometimes also cheaper. But then there's also its own beauty in organizing it more, rurally or in the region. Or also it could be just by reaching out to us, young people from the schools in those regions, and then bringing them also to the bigger cities. That could be also like a good option, actually. I think we can always be creative with, how we reach out, and also just, just prioritizing it. Thank you for sharing this point. I'm wondering if there are any other points you would like to join, or we would slowly finish as we took a bit more time for the discussion part. Feel free to write in the chat if you feel like that's all.
Alrighty, I think with that in mind, I'll stop screen sharing. And yeah, I think we can also stop recording now, unless you'd like to have one last question in person. We'll give you a few last seconds of a chance to do so.
And I would like to use the chance to say I've actually really enjoyed this talk. I'm happy for you participating in our questions and also being here, and we will be always happy to hear more from you. You can always reach us, reach the governing body, and also talk in your NC about such topics, actually, and also use our internal channels to start some discussions. I think this has been, a good talk. Thank you for joining, everyone.
And thank you, everyone. I mentioned Yelena for the point she made on the chat, but thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, full agreement with Chris on that. And yeah, have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.